Amazing. So we'll start as more people are coming in. Welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. And welcome to Atma webinars. I'm Vaishali, as many of you might know. I'm a senior consultant at Atma, and Atma is an accelerator that supports NGOs to become bigger, better, stronger uh, through capacity building and creating systems and processes. And we started our journey in 2007, and the Atma webinar is a curated platform that we started in 2017, where speakers share their practical experiences and knowledge that could benefit all of us in the sector. And our main aim is to have an open space, take up issues that concern our sector, something new, something old. And they're typically across many OD areas like HR, finance. And like today, we have culture, organization culture, which we have not delved into previously. So we're very excited about that. All of our previous webinars are listed on our YouTube channel. Do take time to watch and engage with that. And as you all know, we always strive at Atma to bring forth free and practical resources to everyone. So I will be sharing a link about the intermediary database that we have, which is a verified list of experts um, who provide services for organizational development for various needs. So do go through that and let us know what you think of it. And for today's webinar, right? So while most of us working in the sector are deeply connected to the cause, we still need practices in our organization that help us set healthy work environment, right? And we have Tony with us today to help us think through what it takes to build a culture of belongingness. And thank you so much for joining, Tony. And I'll just share a little bit about him before we start the webinar. And just a second. I also want to mention that please do switch on your video as soon as possible, because after 5 minutes or so, we will have to remove participants who don't have the video on. It's only fair to the ones who do. And for the session today, it is important that we have lovely faces up. So great. So Anthony is an associate professor of leadership at Lewis Business School in Rome and a distinguished visiting professor of leadership at Tecnológico de Monterrey. He also teaches leadership at Harvard, Stanford, among other universities. He has authored scholarly articles on emotion and leadership, focusing on developing relationships and managing emotions. And his latest book is called Screened In: The Art of Living Free in the Digital Age. He has coached G20 cabinet ministers and the CEOs and senior leaders of Fortune 500 companies, such as Disney, IBM, and GE, and the world's largest nonprofits, such as CARE and Save the Children. We're so grateful that you've decided to take time out and interact with all of us today. And one request to all the audience members to put in your questions in the chat box. आज का सेशन मेनली हिंदी में ही इंग्लिश में ही रहेगा, लेकिन अगर आपको हिंदी की सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत है तो आप चैट बॉक्स में लिखिए। आत्मा की टीम से जो भी हैं, हम पूरी कोशिश करेंगे कि जो भी मेन पॉइंट्स हैं हम एटलीस्ट आपके चैट से माध्यम से आपको बता सकें, और आपके जो भी सवाल हैं आप हिंदी, इंग्लिश at the most Marathi we can manage में कर सकते हैं, but the session will be in English. So great. With that, over to you, Anthony.
Okay, thank you, Vaishali. Appreciate your introduction, and also I appreciate the partnership with Atma. Also, Sneha, Vernon, Aishwarya have all been very helpful in organizing this, so I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Silard. I am here in Grottaferrata, which is outside Rome, about 40 minutes drive. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. My wife is from Mexico. We have two kids, 10 and 7 years old, who currently speak English, Spanish, and Italian, but not Hindi. Please forgive. Maybe that will come in the future. Anyway, I've been doing leadership trainings for nonprofit organizations, NGOs, really my whole career. So about 30 years, because I'm now about to turn 57. So I've come to India many times and done these trainings in Chennai and Delhi, with organizations from all over India. I see, well, I think I see Dr. Malvika. Hello. I know you were trying to come to Amsterdam for our last conference, which was last month.
Right.
I'm glad that at least we can get you started here today. Thanks to Aditya, one of my very close friends, for making that connection. Also, thank you to Kristen in Amsterdam she was at our last conference, which was a 2-day conference in Amsterdam, April 4th and 5th, and she suggested that Sneha and Vaishali and Aishwarya and Vernon, that we all connect and do it and a training like this. I think the hope is that we could do a training in person in India. And the idea was that this could be the next best thing, is that let's do a webinar to get started. And I think in order to create a culture of belongingness, while we work together on how to create a culture of belongingness in organizations, it's really important that we all have our videos on, because I think it just helps us to be more connected with each other. It certainly helps me, and I think I think others will feel the same way. We've all been to too many Zooms where you don't see anyone, and we all feel disconnected at the end. So we're trying to avoid that and really create a sense of community. So again, I think Vaishali's already said this, but if you could please put on your video in the next minute or two. If you're not able to put on your video, out of fairness to those who are, we'll have to after a couple minutes remove you from the meeting, and then you can watch the video on YouTube. But we want to have a real kind of a live presence here for those who are participating. So you guys already did this survey where you answered some questions about what gives you a feeling of loneliness in organizations, what gives you a feeling of belongingness, and some really excellent points were made here. For example, a second line of leadership is the biggest challenge. The executive committee is not a paid position. Taking ownership is the key. Keeping members selflessly committed to social causes. Vaishali, I think there's people in the waiting room, but you can probably see them. I don't know if it comes on. I'm seeing them on my computer. Yeah, okay. And here's, I'm a soft-natured person. I want to be firm at the same time strict too. How to develop this quality. How to create a sense of belongingness in an organization that has different locations, hence with a lot of online meetings, right? So that's with the nature of hybrid work, like how do we create that sense of belongingness? My struggle to delegate tasks and ensure they're done. I usually end up compensating and doing a majority of the work. I think we all can relate to that. Involvement in decision-making process, effective communication. So you guys shared a lot of really good points here. The lack of transparency, limited growth opportunities, lack of purpose, lack of clarity in role definition, exclusion, poor recognition, limited support, unclear vision, right? So all of these are kind of things that lead to a sense of loneliness in organizations and a lack of belongingness. So let me just add, maybe, and this is going to be a very experiential and participatory session. So, which, as all the sessions I teach, because I find, especially with leaders like yourselves, leaders don't like to be led, right? So it's important that everyone can participate and really engage. So that said, since we have about 25 people and growing, please keep your comments brief, so that instead of anyone sort of taking the stage for too long and other people start to tune out. So let me ask, what makes you feel lonely at work sometimes, or lack of belongingness at work? Anyone like to share? What drives that for you? Yeah, anyone want to share, like, maybe an example of what kind of provoked loneliness in you in your work?
Yeah, hi everyone. Dr. Malvika here. So I think I'm the only full-timer in my organization in the upper management, and we run clinics in slums of Mumbai. And I realized that most of the other doctors have chosen to have a private practice or they work with the government on the sides. So sometimes important decisions are left to me alone, especially related to meeting up with sponsors that are currently supporting us or will support us in the future. So that sort of, sometimes makes me feel lonely. And also the fact that maybe in my family, I'm the first one who has chosen nonprofit as a career choice. So yeah, these two things.
So I'm just going to deconstruct what Dr. Malvika shared for just a moment, because we're going to look at this. I'm going to share with you a really cutting edge study that we're about to publish on. And by the way, I don't know if you guys, I don't want to sound arrogant to share this, but at least to share it, to say why I'm here teaching about loneliness in organizations to you. Along with Sarah Wright at the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, Sarah and I are the two leading scholars in the world on loneliness in organizations, leaders in loneliness, in terms of peer-reviewed journal publications. So this is something we've been studying for about Sarah for longer than myself. Sarah for I think about 17 years, and me for about 12. And at any rate, and then we started working on all of our papers together about 12 years ago. So she's been a great partner. So what Dr. Malvika shared, there are two things that are really critical to think about there. Number one, she's the only full-timer in the organization. Number two, she's the only one in her family who chose the NGO sector. So those are important because as you're going to see from the study I'll share with you, when we feel different from others, that tends to lead to feelings of loneliness and lack of belongingness. So in those two ways, I can see, Dr. Malvika, you feel isolated, right? How about others? What causes you to feel lonely? Jonathan, I see your hands up. And hi, Jonathan. Good to see you.
Hi. So I think when the activities or tasks that I was working on was not understood completely by others in the organization, that made me feel lonely. For instance, there was a time when I was the only person fundraising in the organization. And every time you go to funders, you get a lot of questions about your program. Or every time you go for professional development workshops, you come back with this newfound enthusiasm. And sometimes, you're the only one who carries that enthusiasm. I mean, that changed the moment we started to, our team started to get bigger and people started to join us in these activities. But every time a new activity pops up, I guess that feeling arises before more join the team of that activity.
So thank you, Jonathan. What Jonathan just shared now points to two other differences, even distinct from what Dr. Malvika shared. So feeling that you're the only one in fundraising. So there's this sort of work role configuration that's distinct. You're in fundraising, others are in programs. Then there's also this, Jonathan also shared, feeling that others are not as passionate about the cause he's working toward as he is. And so this difference in passion or commitment can work both ways. If you're the only one who's so passionate, you feel lonely. If you're the only one who's not passionate, not committed, you're with a group of people that are all committed and you're like, look, this is not that big of a deal, then you can also feel isolated from others. How about, and thanks again, everyone, for having your videos on. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. So, by the way, I myself am the director of a nonprofit organization. It's the Center for Social Leadership. I'll tell you guys about that later, but essentially, we do these kinds of trainings for nonprofits. That's what I'm dedicated to. And, but I've been a nonprofit executive director for about 25 years before I raised about $15 million for an organization called Global Education Partnership, doing entrepreneurship and work readiness training for disadvantaged youth, with divisions in Kenya, Tanzania, Guatemala, Indonesia, and 2 in the US in the inner cities. So I've been doing nonprofit work really my whole life, like I know many of you have. Okay, so maybe one more example, anyone? What stimulates a feeling of loneliness in you at work?
This is Babu from Tamil Nadu, Madurai.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah, fine, Anthony. Happy to see you. And
Me too.
I gave my views when the question I received in the beginning. So what makes me loneliness is when the views are not recognized in a forum, high level. That makes me loneliness. The same thing when my views are recognized, then the belongings comes.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah,
is-
thank you, Melvin. So William James, the psychologist, many say the best U.S. psychologist, in history in the late 19th century, he once said that the deepest human craving is the desire to feel appreciated. And when we feel like our views don't count, they're not appreciated, maybe because of status differences or just because people are closed-minded, then we say, "Why? What am I doing here anyway?" Right? We feel lonely. We feel like we're wasting our time. So thank you for sharing that. Right. Okay. Thank you, Babu. So what I want to do now is I'm going to share with you what the research is showing, okay, about what stimulates the feeling of a lack of belongingness and feelings of loneliness. So let's go. I'm going to share some slides with you. Anyone has any questions anytime, you can interrupt me. It's no problem. Okay. So all right, let's see. So I'm going to share the slide here. By the way, I came across something that I think is just fascinating. I'm going to share with you guys. And I just found this recently. And it is that, you see here, look at this slide. There's two things going on in the slide. Okay, you see that on the one hand, it says lonely at the top and bottom. On the other hand, it says how to create a culture of belongingness in your organization. So there's a negative followed by a positive. Do you notice that? Loneliness is negative, belongingness is positive. Well, do you know what? There was a Canadian study that recently found that if you ask people, are you happy with your social life? And they answer, and then you ask them to describe their social life. And then you ask another group of people, similar demographic, are you unhappy with your social life? And then ask them to describe it. The people who were first asked, are you happy with your social life? Or versus, are you unhappy with your social life? Those who were asked, are you unhappy? They share 375% more problems with their social life than those who are asked if they were happy to start it off. So psychologists can put us in this frame of mind of seeing things positively or negatively, and then everything follows from that. So that's why we called this session, which Vaishali and Sneha and Vernon and I worked out, we called it how to create a culture of belongingness in your organization, because that's a positive, right? That means, hey, I feel motivated. I can do something to change this. Whereas if I used to call this session essentially lonely at the top and bottom, or I would call it how to reduce loneliness in organizations. Problem with that is it starts with a negative. And so we start seeing everything negatively and less motivated. So the words we use have a lot of power, just to share that, especially when it comes to the most important thing in our lives for each of us, which is social connection. Right? So whether you want to admit it or not, I don't know anyone where personal relationships are not important to them. In fact, if you look at the longest standing study of adult development in history at Harvard University, over 80 years running, Dr. Robert Waldinger, when he was asked about it, he said that the only thing they found that in terms of what leads to long-term well-being, happiness, is social connection. It's the quality of your relationships. So for example, people who have a higher quality of their close relationships in their middle age are the happiest seniors, and so on and so forth. All the psychological research on happiness, the only real panacea that it offers is that developing close relationships with others is the most important ingredient for your long-term happiness. Everything else is inconclusive, basically. I mean, there's also a lot of research showing that gratitude tends to lead to happiness. The more grateful you are, the more you appreciate what you have. That, I would say, is like the intrapersonal. In fact, my next book, which is called Love and Suffering, it's I call gratitude the intrapersonal panacea, because gratitude leads to happiness. It's something within us. When we feel gratitude, we tend to be happier. I call close interpersonal relationships, or just close relationships are the interpersonal panacea for happiness. So those two things, close relationships and gratitude, if you can do those well, you're going to be much happier. At least that's what the psychological research is showing us. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. I'm going to send you the slides through Vaishali, so you don't need to write these things down. So here's a quote that essentially Tom Wolfe, that loneliness is not something rare. It's the central and inevitable fact of human existence. All the great stories of literature deal with loneliness. This is another Tom. Anybody want to guess who it is? Life is a box of chocolates. That's a hint. Tom Hanks from Forrest Gump. That's his quote. Now, loneliness and solitude are different things. So I think a good way to think of it, I'm gonna share this with you as clearly as I can after researching this for 15 years, okay? Loneliness is a negative, distressing emotion associated with being alone. Solitude is a positive, strengthening emotion associated with being alone. So it's not being alone that causes loneliness. You can be around a big group of people and feel lonely, as Babu shared, because nobody cares about your point of view, right? You can also be alone, like many of you sleep in rooms alone by yourself. You just woke up from such a room this morning. That's physical isolation, but you may not feel lonely because of the way you interpret being alone. So loneliness is an emotion, and it's associated with being alone. Some researchers call loneliness subjective isolation versus objective isolation. So objective isolation is being alone. Subjective isolation is feeling lonely because you're alone, right? So it differs for each person. Okay, so here's a quote to that extent. So when I teach about loneliness, I have what I call the inner detour, and so because loneliness is not, you don't fix loneliness by going and spending the rest of your time outside with people. You fix it first by working on your relationship with yourself, and then approaching others in a different way. Approaching others not out of need for others, but out of want for others, because you enjoy others, not because you need them in order to feel whole. So this is a little bit what I just shared with you, right? So loneliness is the perception of social isolation. Okay, loneliness is not something you want to have in your life. Okay, so first of all, physical health. You will die younger if you're lonely, most likely. You don't sleep as well. You wake up more in the middle of the night. Even wounds on your body will heal faster when you're not lonely, and they'll heal more slowly when you're lonely. You can read all the rest of this, but basically, physiologically speaking, loneliness is not a good idea. Mental health, the same. Loneliness tends to lead to more depression, more anxiety. You feel worse about yourself. You burn out faster. You feel more stressed. In organizations, loneliness also has as many deleterious effects. You don't make as good decisions. Your executive functioning, your thinking is not as good. You don't perform as well. So the late Sigal Barsade, Turkish researcher, she really had the sort of breakthrough study linking loneliness to reduced performance, since there have been other studies finding the same thing. So a little bit about loneliness. And so I'm including all the references here. Those of you that want to research this more, we're gonna send you the slides. You can look more deeply into the effects of loneliness in organizations. So this is from a paper in one of the top organizational behavior journals, Human Relations, that Sarah Wright and I worked on together. This is really Sarah's model, and I kind of tagged along on this paper. We switch off a lot who leads papers, but this is really her idea, and so I think this is really useful. So if you think about it, you have the desired social distance in any particular relationship that you have with someone else and the actual social distance. So we feel lonely when the desired social distance is less than the actual social distance. In other words, you wish you were closer to someone else than you are. That's when you feel lonely. Now, the other side of that is if Z is greater than X down here, where you wish you were more socially distant from someone than they want to be. How many of you raise your hands if you've been in situations where the other person is kind of too dependent and trying too much to be your friend or to be close with you, and you start to feel what's called relational encroachment or intrusion? Raise your hand if you felt that. Right? And then raise your hand if you felt the other way, where you want to be closer than the other person does, and you feel this relational deficiency or loneliness. Raise your hand if you felt that. Like, I mean, if we're being honest, we all feel all of these every single week, right? And so what I would say is that the human social struggle is to balance social distance. And we are always doing that. And we give off verbal and nonverbal signals all the time that say either come closer or go further away, right? Because we always are managing social distance in every relationship. So that's a good way to sort of think about loneliness. It happens when we want to be closer than the other person does. And I write a column for Psychology Today, and I think I've got like 6 articles on, more or less, on I think they're called like, so you want to be closer than they do. And it's all about this, about social distance, for those of you interested. If you go to Psychology Today and just Google Psychology Today and my name, you'll find all, like, there's like 100 articles there on a lot of these topics. So, okay, so the research that I've been doing with Sarah and a number of other people, including Archana Tidone, who I think is 5:30 a.m. in Connecticut, so she's not able to make it, but she's originally from India, but in the US, and also doing similar research, and we're co-authoring one of these papers. We found that there are 3 basic human motives that when either one of these go unmet, these lead to loneliness. And so these are actually 4 papers that we're working on, one on each of these, and then one on the leadership strategies to how to meet these needs. So the first is the need to connect, the need for emotional connection. Right? The second is the need to belong. The third is the need to contribute. When any one of these human needs is unmet in organizations, we feel lonely. So let me give you an example of how each of these can play out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save this example for you just before we're going to break you guys into groups so you guys can come up with some strategies to reduce these needs. So I'm going to wait until that's fresh, so that's fresh in your mind, and then I'm going to share with you the 3 examples. Before we do that, I want to go here to this paper that I'm working on now with a few other scholars, and with Sarah Wright and Madison LaBelle. And okay, so here. Okay, I'm going to go through this quickly, and just to show you those 3 fundamental human needs: the need to connect, the need to belong, the need to contribute. This is just the paper on the need to belong, and how the need to belong, because that's what we're focusing on here today, is how to create a culture of belongingness. So although as we'll see, all 3 are important to create a culture of belongingness. So let's just take a really fine-grained look. And these are interviews with about 75 nonprofit leaders, and just like and nonprofit organizational members. Not all are in leadership roles, and asking them the same question I asked you in the survey, like what leads to a feeling of belongingness or a feeling of loneliness in organizations, and what can leaders do to change this? So let's take a look. All right, so this looks a little complex, but it's going to appear simpler in just a moment. So we're going to look first at, so these are the first stage mechanisms that lead to feeling either not valued, not appreciated, or not included. Those are the second stage mechanisms. These are all organizational member perceptions. Okay, and then here you'll see there's some organizational structure processes that also play a role here. That's going to then lead to a lack of belongingness when you don't feel appreciated, valued, or included, which then leads to more loneliness. And as we'll see, there's a contingent factor or contextual variable, which is the need to belong. Right? Some people have a strong need to belong, some don't. So we're going to see all this in a moment. Let's start with these organizational member perceptions. So the idea here is this relates to dissimilarity. Just as we said at the beginning here, Babu feeling that his views are different from others. Dr. Malvika feeling like Jonathan's feeling like he's doing fundraising, others are not. He's passionate, others are not. Dr. Malvika feeling like she's different from others in that she's the only one working full time. So let's take a look at how this plays out, these differences. Let's start with that. So values. So here you see quotes of people feeling like they have different values from others, and that leads to them feeling lonely. One participant shared here that if they had the same values, that notion of the path, how you get there, I just wish I had a stronger sense of camaraderie with others. Some people just more black and white in their approach. The second quote, you work there for 10 hours a day and you kind of run out of things to talk about with these people. A lack of values congruence. Commitment. This is a person working at one of the largest healthcare organizations in the US. I didn't feel connections with anyone at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I felt a connection with none of my colleagues. Okay. We just weren't in the same thinking space or feeling space. They were there to do their 9 to 5 and get out, get their paycheck. He was looking for more than that. And as a result, I felt misplaced and felt lonely. I felt like a fish out of water. So now here's the opposite. This is someone whose commitment on the right side is not as great as others. And it made him feel lonely, right? Like I felt I was really doing nothing with my time. It made it harder to connect with people who felt like they were doing something. That says a lot. Tenure. So people who have been in the organization for a little time, newcomers, often feel lonely. Many people in your organization that are new, especially if they've moved from another city or town, they don't have the same social connections at home. And then they come in, it's hard to break into the social connections. You know, we're here in Italy and our children are the only foreigners in an Italian school and they feel lonely a lot because they feel like newcomers. It's hard to break into those existing cliques. Anyway, you're going to get all of these. You'll get to see all this with much more time. Demographic profile. So here on gender, okay, you know, I could find other people, but not women, or women with 4 kids and with a disabled child, or that were running their own companies. At the end of the day, it all comes crashing in. And sometimes you get to a point you're like, it just stinks and it's rotten and it's horrible. And I don't want to do this anymore. Right? Now here you have on the other quote is someone who is the only Latina, and this is in Washington, D.C., working in an organization of 50 people. And so based on this difference in ethnicity, felt different. So think about in India, right, where you guys are working. So there could be someone who feels they're the only person of a certain caste or the only person of a certain religion or gender or sexual orientation or age. All of these like feeling like, or full-time or part-time, you know, so Dr. Malvika, imagine if everyone at Gully Clinic was full-time and you had one part-time person, they could feel lonely, right? Everyone that's full-time is so connected and doing all these great things and I'm just here and I'm not really part of the group, you know? So difference is what gives those, the perception of difference can really create that feeling of loneliness and lack of belongingness. Also culture. So here is interesting. Here you have on the left, you have a guy who he's actually a nonprofit director of one of the largest youth organizations in Washington, D.C. And he remembers playing basketball in Finland. I didn't speak their mother tongue. Culturally, it was very different and just never felt like he fit in. And then here, age, you know, here's someone who is saying they're the youth leader and they're overseeing youth. But they're in their early 20s and everyone else is younger. And so they didn't feel like they fit in. Or your life situation is different. Here, everyone else is a grad student and I'm an undergrad. And I was pretty lonely then. And here's the opposite, someone who doesn't feel lonely because this is a former foster youth who's working in an organization, and there's a lot of former foster youth working there, so she feels included. Right? Think about your clients, how they can feel included. For example, you bring someone, Dr. Malvika, from one of the slums you're working in to come to a board meeting, and they're the only low-income person there. They could feel lonely and disconnected from others because like everyone's looking at me funny because I'm poor to them compared to the resources they have. Okay, so now let's take a look at the organizational structure and processes. Some of these you guys also shared in the survey. So here's like a school counselor works in various schools. This is in California, and this is common in California, right? Where the school counselors are rotating from to different schools, but she never felt included at one school. She always felt ignored because she really wasn't part of any specific school. She was going from one school to the other. Here, I'm going into a team that they had all a good camaraderie, and I'm the new person, and then I go there and then I leave. And so they feel it's, this is a very lonely job. Poor supervisor support often leads to loneliness. And you can read these quotes here of having like a supervisor that really wasn't supervising very well. And so they feel lonely. And some of you guys mentioned that in the survey, just poor leadership leads to feeling lonely, lack of belonging. Ostracism. So rejection, you guys, stings fast and furious. Like ostracism, rejection. There's even a study, and I'm not kidding you here. There's a study that found that if you simulate online that someone is being invited in to a like a despised hate group, like in this study was with the KKK in the United States, Ku Klux Klan, which is a racist. I'm sure you've seen some of the movies. The guys wearing the white pointed caps, and known for being very racist. And so they did a study where somebody was in a meeting with the KKK. It was all simulated. There was no real meeting, but they thought they were. And then they were asked to leave the meeting, and they felt rejected. They felt lonely afterwards, even though they didn't want to be a part of such a despised hate group. So ostracism, as you can see here, can have really, really strong effects. And you guys can read these for yourself. Here's another quote. Someone at McKinsey, I've started to feel really isolated. I never felt so lonely in a work environment in my life. I was almost hated. I almost felt hated. I was incredible. I had never felt like this before. Now you see here, if you read the quote, he feels like his manager's rolling his eyes at him and laughing at him. Well, here's another problem. Loneliness is self-perpetuating. Maybe the manager was making a joke about something else and not even talking about him. But when we feel lonely, we start to feel like everyone, loneliness has an element of narcissism. It's like everyone's against me and it's all about me and they don't care about me. You know what? Maybe it wasn't about him. Maybe the manager was actually talking about something else, but this is a mistake that we make. And the problem with loneliness is that it becomes self-perpetuating because once we feel lonely, we start to feel uncomfortable and awkward in social encounters. And that, of course, pushes people further away from us and we feel even lonelier. Turnover. When there's high turnover, that also leads to loneliness. As you see, lots of people leaving, new people joining, the newness of my surroundings contributed to my current state of loneliness. Here's someone else. They were in the AmeriCorps, which is a volunteer organization, and everybody else wanted to be for 10 months in Montana, having a good time out there sleeping in tents, but he was looking for something more, and that turnover led to him feeling even lonelier. Okay, now let's look at this individual. So this is basically a personality attribute. Some people have a stronger need to belong than others, and let's take a quick look. So I think this is really poignant here. So here you have this is a woman who was a foster child. In other words, she was adopted. And in her adoptive family, when she was growing up with her sister, like the biological children in the family would get like an iPhone for Christmas, and they would get a book, right? And so she felt not included, ostracized. And then later, when she's working in an organization that serves foster children, she also feels ostracized and not included. So some of us have a stronger tendency toward loneliness, a stronger need to belong, because of the way we've grown up. Maybe you didn't feel like you belonged at home in your own family. Maybe you didn't feel like the community you lived in, you were a minority, and an ethnic minority or other type of minority, or maybe you were the only girl in a family with 6 brothers, or vice versa. All of these can lead to kind of a stronger need to belong, which is important that you recognize. Here's another quote about the need to belong. How that need to belong can spill over from work to home or home to work. In this case, not this woman not feeling like she belonged at work. It says it's affecting every part of my life. Her kids want to go do things with her, and she's like, I just feel sad and depressed, and I say, no, go ahead, I'll just be here, right? Isolation. So I'm gonna now go back to the original question before we break into groups here, which is, okay, so these 3 motives that we talked about. So let's take a look at how these could be different. So the need to connect is about the need for emotional connection. So the water cooler conversations, feeling like you get along with others, you enjoy talking with others in the organization. The need to belong is the need to feel like you're a part of the organization, like you're included, you're appreciated, you're valued, as I just shared from the previous study. So that's feelings of being appreciated, included, valued, make you feel like you belong. The need to contribute is the need to feel like the work you're doing is meaningful. So if you look at the widely agreed upon definition of leadership, it's the capacity to mobilize a group of people toward collective objectives. Again, leadership is the capacity to mobilize a group of people toward collective objectives. So if you think about it, leadership is doing through others, getting others to do what you want them to do, but to feel like they want to do it. As leaders in the social sector, we each have a certain contribution we want to make. And I saw this a lot in your surveys, right? Keep members selflessly committed to social causes. That's the words of one of you. So that's what we're after. And so if you feel like you're not making that contribution as you like to, you can feel lonely. So let me give you an example. Let's take Sushma. She works in an insurance company. Okay, so her need to connect feels satisfied. She gets along with everyone well. Her need to contribute is satisfied. She believes in the importance of insurance, helping people in times of tragedy. But she doesn't feel like she belongs because she was in a mid-level role, a mid-level manager, and the CEO took her out of that role, moved her into another group with less responsibility. Now she doesn't feel appreciated, valued, and included as she wants to. The need to belong is no longer met. She feels lonely. Now let's take James. James is the CEO of the insurance company, and he feels like he belongs because he created the company. He's certainly included, appreciated, valued as the CEO. His need to contribute is fulfilled because he believes in the role of insurance and in helping people. But the need to connect is not being met because now that he's the CEO, nobody wants to hang out with him anymore. Like nobody wants to be socially interacting much with the CEO. The staff, the employees go out and have parties. They don't invite him. And so he's not feeling connected with others. So they're sort of lonely at the top. Now there's a third person. This third person is Maria. And Maria feels connected. She's also a mid-level manager, like Sushma. She feels the need to connect, so is being met. She gets along with others well. The need to belong is being met. She's running an important division of the insurance company. But unfortunately, her brother passed away 4 months ago. And ever since then, it's just not the same. Now she's starting to ask herself, like, I could go anytime too. You never know what happens in life. And selling insurance, is that really what I want to be remembered for? She starts having these conversations with herself and even with some of her friends and family, saying, I know the policies that we have at our, sometimes our company takes advantage of low-income people who think they're getting something and they're not getting that in the policy. And in fact, we have all these bureaucratic impediments to prevent them from getting help when they really need it. And I'm just not sure selling insurance is making an impact in the world. And after my brother passed away, I don't know, maybe I want to go, I want to go work with an NGO that's doing something really grassroots, because I don't know how much longer I have on this earth and I want to really make a difference. So her need to contribute is not being met. As a result, she starts to feel lonely within her organization. So you see, any one of these needs can lead to loneliness and a lack of belongingness for an individual. So let me now ask first if there's any questions, anything I can clarify before we go to our exercise. Okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break into groups of about 5. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pick one of these needs that you feel is not sufficiently met in your organization. And with your group, I want you to come up with leadership strategies to satisfy that need. So leadership strategies to help your team members feel more like they are connected with each other, to feel more like they belong to the organization, to feel more like they're making a contribution that's meaningful for them. Now, if you want, you can talk about more than one of the needs, come up with a few strategies for each. It's up to you. But what I'd like you to do is designate a representative of your group to share with all of us the strategies that you come up with together. And then after each of you shares, I'm going to share with you about 11 or 12 strategies, or 13 strategies, sorry, about the same. How can you help create a sense of belongingness, a culture of belongingness, and reduce loneliness in your organizations? But let's first hear your strategies. So again, in your groups of 5, discuss how to satisfy how leaders can satisfy that need to belong, to connect, and/or to contribute. Okay, so I'm going to break you into groups here. I think, Vaishali, you want to break them into groups, and then we'll bring you back here in about 25 minutes, and then we'll finish up together. Okay.
I've opened all the rooms. Yeah, you can please join. Sakina, you can join your room 3. Are you able to see, Sakina ji? Hello, Sakina ji, can you hear me?
there?
Yes, I'm here. So I think we're waiting for Anthony.
Anthony's here.
Right here.
Oh, hey, Anthony.
We can't see. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, so let's hear what you guys discovered together. So let's start with anyone who would like to start and share what your group learned together, or rather what you came up with about strategies to reduce either the need to or to satisfy the need to belong or to connect or to contribute. Let's go ahead and get started. So who would like to start us off?
I think Malvika raised.
Okay, Dr. Malvika, sure.
I don't want to be that person who's always answering in a class, but then we have prepped a lot of points, so I thought I'll just go ahead. So we were 5 of us, Megha, Lata, Viresh, Kavita, and myself. So we came up with a little bit of everything. Our first strategy is related to the need to connect, which came out was a better recruitment strategy, wherein you select employees and while selecting them, ensure that there is some value alignment with what your organization's vision is, and ensure that they understand what kind of work style will it be. For example, it can be a hybrid model, then you let them know about that. And if they are going to be completely online, so on and so forth. The second strategy is engagement outside of work. We understand that we are social organizations. We have limited budget, but then as a leadership team, we need to ensure that there is some budgeting for networking of employees, for maybe lunch-ons or something else. And there might be some personal development seminars where they are invited to. So that can be another way in which they feel emotionally connected. The third part is having an open door policy of the upper management or senior management. Apart from that, transparent communication between the team leads and the ones on ground. Do I have to enlist all, or should I let others? Yeah, so that's from my side. Maybe others can put in.
Okay, well, thank you. Maybe perhaps with the next group, would someone like to share what you came up with together?
I think we were group number 2. Pritika, do you want to maybe share, or Sharmila ma'am, any of the others?
I can read out what Aishwarya, you had kindly written and shared in the chat. So our group was Rajkumari ma'am, Aishwarya, Sharmila, Jhansi Rani, and Sadhvi. These were the points. We looked at belonging. So first was to create spaces for everyone to be heard, everyone's feedback considered, to create a culture of appreciation and recognition, to acknowledge and respect differences, that we were different but working towards a similar goal, to provide support in personal life and care for the team, to create spaces for sharing about one's personal struggles, experiences, to have space for informal connections and celebrations, to engage with the employees a bit more by instituting a support system, to have a secure, safe space where we can actually share our views, create a comfortable working space, to involve employees in decision making. So there's an inclusiveness in the final decision that's made, to encourage interpersonal relationships, forming social bonds, acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of a team, being very clear about the team's role, each person's role and responsibility, to demonstrate the organization's commitment towards enabling a growth path for the employees. Culture of appreciation came up quite a bit. So that's there again. Teaching people how to give and take constructive feedback. and opportunities to represent the organization externally. And lastly, to create the space for fairness in promotions, rewards, and opportunities.
Well, these are fantastic. I really like especially about creating a safe and secure space. That seems to speak to the research by Amy Edmondson at Harvard on psychological safety, like where people feel they can speak up because they feel it's safe to do so. Or Donald Winnicott's research on creating like a holding environment, a container where people can feel like they can be open. So wonderful. Our next group like to go?
Yes, I can share next. This is group 3. And we were 5 of us. There was Gumit, Dipon, Sakina, myself, Kavita, and Vanita in this group. So some of the points that we discussed, one is sharing of personal stories and our own life struggles with the team when we are talking to them. Second is on celebration of events and festivals for team building. So arranging for lunch, gifts, item, tokens, and even giving appreciation certificates during this time that helps with team bonding. Third is while you're talking to your team, it's very important to tell them how important their role is or how significant the role is for the organization. So not just seeing themselves as a teacher, but something beyond that as to how it's helping the overall sector. Also involving the team in the alignment on vision and mission during the strategic discussions that happen in the organization. So that makes them feel valued when their views and perspectives are taken into account. And I think the last point was about the leader lending a listening ear to the team members and just making them feel supported and giving the message that they are there to listen to them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kavita. And yeah, I think all of us can relate to that, wanting to feel like, you know, as Babu shared earlier, that your views are important and people will listen to you in an organization. Excellent. Our next group like to go?
I think I request for Jonathan or Sneha can little contribute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, I can go. So we had 5 of us in the group, and I think just some of the suggestions that came up were looking at creating a space for contribution by others, by giving them ownership in the organization, by even though they may have more junior roles, but letting them lead certain spaces, meetings, giving them new opportunities to try different things, and even if they don't do it very well, being supportive of that. This will help them feel like they're making a difference and actually contributing to the organization. We spoke about how to build a sense of connection. We need to, do things both the hard and soft way. So, have policies that allow for people to spend money on this, to actually create space to connect and meet, like the lunches and everything we talked about, but also like on the softer side of it, to connect with people by just communicating more often and having that dialogue beyond work, connecting more personally, and allowing that space to be there for everybody in the organization. And then on belongingness, I think there was a suggestion that came on how feedback is taken from everyone in the organization. So even though it may be an activity or an initiative of a particular department, you are involving others in sort of hearing from them, seeking their views out and imbibing them, in what is practiced in the organization as a whole. Yeah.
Fantastic, Sneha. Yeah, so this real feeling of people feeling like welcomed and invited and encouraged to join, that essentially it's about people feeling valued. So that was fantastic. Is there another group that would like to go? Okay, so in this case, let me share with you some of the strategies that we've come up with based on all the interviews we've done, which are actually in a few hundred, for all of the studies that we've done together on loneliness and belongingness, and especially in nonprofit organizations, NGOs. So, one moment. Okay, so here. Okay, so I'm just going to share them kind of one by one. So it's kind of like a flower in a garden. Like you only grow the flowers that you water, right? So thinking about what is it that you want to grow. If you want to grow like teamwork and mentoring and coaching, collaboration, you have to reward that. A big mistake many organizations make is that they want teamwork, but they reward individual performance only. This is very common. Like, think about it. Think about your employees. Like, do they, in order to be promoted, in order to receive a, I don't know, like a salary increase, is it really, do you even have in your quarterly performance reviews or your annual evaluation, is there anything about teamwork, about collaboration? Or is it just about how much funds have you raised, how many people have you served, and so forth? So you want to have some indicators of teamwork and helping others, what are called organizational citizenship behaviors, helping others in the organization. Home teams is one of my favorite concepts, I think, to increase a sense of belongingness and reduce loneliness. And this is the idea. I don't know for each of you what it was like for you, but I can say growing up in the United States, what most of us do is we go to a local elementary school or primary school, and we know everybody, it's in our neighborhood, and then we go off to a middle school, which is a little further away, and we don't know as many people. It's a bigger school, and we often feel lonely. Well, in middle schools and high schools, that's why they have, in primary school, you stay in the same room with the same kids the whole day. Well, in middle school, you start to go out to different classes. And so there's what we call homeroom, which is like, homeroom means you meet with one teacher and a group of students every morning when you enter the school. And usually before you leave, you come back to that same group. And so I think similarly, organizations could have home teams where you form across divisions, across silos, across functions. You form these groups of like 5 to 8 people or however many you feel it's appropriate. And they get together, maybe not every day, but maybe once a week for half an hour, just to talk about how everyone's doing, how's it going. Maybe every few weeks they go for lunch together. So that could be a great way to build a sense of kind of belongingness. And that's similar to these sort of transverse. So a home team would be a transversal team going across silos. So supporting those. Also, remember, when someone comes in and they're new, they're leaving their social network, they're entering your social network, they don't know anyone. So having some kind of a buddy or a system where you have someone who's like been longer in the organization to kind of be a friend or buddy with the person who's coming in, and kind of meet with them once a week or even more often, ask them how it's going, giving them support. Then we have here, yes?
Because buddy system is something we tried in our organization, and I wanted to share that it worked beautifully. What we did is when a person joined, the day before they joined, we said, this is your buddy, and the buddy would send a welcome message and say, and we tried this way that the buddy is not from your immediate home team. They're not somebody who's directly from the home team, but outside, so that they can always have like a check-in which is beyond their current team who they meet, to get a perspective on the larger bit. So that worked very well for the previous year. And in my review from the team of how did this do when they were inducted into the system, the buddies shared that they are not always very clear what is their prolonged role, because very often they are not leaders, but they are probably around the same hierarchy level. So over the 4-6 months, do you recommend that the buddy can then dissolve, or what's the nature of their relationship? So that was my question. If you think, from your experience of interacting with so many NGOs, what is the possibility? Is it only for onboarding? Can there be a continued system?
Sure.
What do you think?
One of my spiritual mentors has always been Swami Vivekananda. I've read most of his volumes and his work, and he talks about how when you have like a small tree, you can tie a stick to the tree, like a sort of like in a fledgling sapling that's growing, and then after a while you can throw away the stick. or you can put a small fence around it in the beginning, but then you can get rid of the fence. So I think similar, like with onboarding, I would propose that you have a kind of a structured process for the first maybe 6 months, and then you kind of you also ask for feedback from the mentor and the mentee, and say, like, is this in terms of a structured process? Do we need another 3 months, another 6 months, or is it time to throw away the structure and you guys go ahead as you like on your own? So I think it would depend on each situation. Again, remembering the need to belong is there's a lot of personal variation from one to another. So just to wrap, I'm going to share very, very quickly then, just to finish up, like shared meaningfulness. One thing I really recommend doing when people come into your organization, you have like your team meeting. When you start the team meeting, maybe every 2 weeks, and maybe don't do this all the time, but do it like every few months at one of your meetings. Start the meeting by saying, each one of you has come into our office today for a different reason, right? And each of us have different motivations. Let's go around in the room, and let's give each person the opportunity to share, like, why are you here? Why did you come here today? Like, what is it about the work we're doing that's motivating for you? And you start getting very different stories, and that creates connection around meaning. I think, you guys, okay, the interpersonal communication training is pretty straightforward. So nuanced holistic interest. What this means is that as a leader, you want to have an interest and be empathetic toward people, not toward just their work, but toward more holistic life. And also a nuanced one, which means that one thing I hear a lot of team members share is that I hate it when the leader stops me and asks me, how are you doing? How is your family? Because they don't remember a thing. And then 2 weeks later, they ask me the same questions, right? So that's really can be undermining for people. So, I really suggest as a leader, just keep some notes somewhere, like, okay, so, so-and-so's husband is named this, her dog is this name. They like to go on vacation to Goa, or Kerala, or whatever, like things, so that when you talk with people, you remember some of the things they've shared before, and that helps develop the relationship, like that you really do care about them. We could do another session later where we talk about how nonprofit NGO leaders tend to lose their empathy over time. We do a whole session on that, and what to do about that, but that might be for the future. So self-disclosure. Especially for when you have hybrid meetings or virtual meetings like this, there's research by the social psychologist Aron that's found that when others self-disclose to us and share about their personal lives, we like them more. So you want to create a system where people can self-disclose more often, and part of that is modeling it yourself. And then, okay, so one other way is that this making people feel appreciated or helping people feel appreciated. What you can do is in each one of your staff meetings, you can say, okay, so Babu, you've just done a fantastic job on social marketing these last 6 months. Can you teach everyone some of your best practices in social marketing, and take like 5 or 10 minutes to do that in our next meeting next month. And so you do that every month with a different person can teach something. There's a saying I love, which is, if you want someone to learn how to do something, ask them to teach it, right? And so that gives them a feeling of being appreciated. And then I'm going to just share these quickly. They're pretty self-explanatory. Organizational constellations. If you're interested in that, check out Bert Hellinger's work on family constellations and imagine how that might extrapolate to an NGO. And then, of course, work-life balance shows people that you care about them, that you appreciate them. So you have it when we send you the slides. These are some of the pillars of organizational belongingness that we're finding. And let's see some of the references. And then here, I just want to share with you a few things. Okay, so if you go to theartoflivingfree.org, that is the learning platform for the nonprofit organization I run, which is the Center for Social Leadership. I'm doing this today pro bono. all of my books, all the books, videos, or whatever, anything that you can get there, all proceeds of all of my books go to these nonprofit education programs. But the important thing is that at theartoflivingfree.org, there's resources there that are free that you can use to help in leadership, whether they're articles, podcasts, and so forth. By the way, there's a new free ebook there's a free ebook that's going to come up there on the Art of Living Free. If you go there and put in your email, within a couple of months, there'll be this free ebook called The Myth of Happiness, is what it's called. The Myth of Happiness. And that'll be free to anyone who's signed up there when you get the newsletter. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn. Here you have my email. And then I would like to make a request to everyone, if it's okay. I'd like to request a really big favor. Archana, who I mentioned before, and I are doing this study on leader strategies to reduce loneliness and to increase a sense of belongingness. You guys very kindly did the survey that we sent to you before starting. Vaishali is going to send you a feedback form for today's webinar. In that form, there's one other question that I want to ask you, and most people did the surveys, just sending just a few sentences here and there, or a few words. What I'd like to ask you to do is to please share a story with us in the feedback, a story of a leader who you've observed and something in their actions has either increased your feelings of loneliness or decreased them, or fostered your feelings of belongingness or reduced your feelings of belongingness. Just one incident in your career where you've seen a leader act in such a way to either help people to feel a stronger sense of belongingness and less loneliness, or the opposite, to feel less belongingness and more loneliness. That would really help us a lot. And really like when you give us permission to use that, and we de-identify, so not use any of your personal information, that really helps us to upgrade these studies that we're doing so we can help other organizations like yours. So that would be my one request. Let me just ask, who here would be willing to commit to share that one story with us in the feedback form? So I'm raising my hand, but I'm not doing the feedback form. So this is really for you guys. Okay, so thank you so much, you guys. Thank you. And the last thing I want to share is, if there's interest, let Sneha, Vaishali, Vernon, Aishwarya, let them know that you would like to do more of this. And, Rome is not that far from India, so we could try to organize something. I love India. I love the spirit of debate and constructive disagreement. I think I've always had some of the highlights of my career doing these nonprofit leadership trainings in India. I'm willing to do them pro bono. For me, I get paid by the university here in Rome. So, and this is really my personal mission, is to really bring more leadership training to people that can use it as a mechanism of social change, which is what each one of you is doing. So just let them know, and we'll try to organize something, okay? Because whatever we've been able to create here, imagine it's going to be like 100 times more in person. So let's see if we can do something in the future. So thank you, guys. I'll shut up now and just say thank you so much for wonderful participation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
I know we're over time, but we can wait for another maybe 5 minutes. And if anyone has any questions or anything that they want to share, we can do that, if it's okay with everyone. Yeah.
Sure.
I have shared the feedback form and the recording of the video and the presentation and some other links that Anthony mentioned. We will be sharing in an email. So do look out for that. But yeah, we'll just open the floor for any questions or any thoughts that you want to share.
I think this is an interesting session, and very useful for our industry. And yeah, loneliness can be very difficult to handle, and it can cause a lot of problems in the organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I'm just adding the form again.
Yeah, thank you for the space. Really much needed. And I hope we can do more. It was very nice to be part of this, go into breakout rooms, discuss and hear from each other. So I hope we can do more of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know it's like a topic which probably needs more time or more just, practicing and trying out. And I hope that each one of you is able to do that in your organization. And do keep in touch with us. If any of you has any more suggestions for Atma webinars as well, please do share with us. And yes, once again, thank you so much, Anthony. And we will be sharing his email ID with all of you. Do connect with him. And, I think there's a lot that can be done together. So great. If there are no more questions, we can end the call today. And thank you so much.